The ring trembled between my fingers as I knelt before Nancy, but she didn't even glance at it. Her eyes locked onto mine with a cruel amusement that burned hotter than any rejection. "Billy," she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "you call this a proposal?" The restaurant fell silent. Forks paused mid-air, conversations stopped. Everyone was watching me beg, but I never begged. I held out the tiny diamond, one I had saved for by skipping meals, working extra shifts, selling the watch my father left me. But none of that mattered to her. Not when it wasn't the giant stone she fantasized about. Her laugh sliced through me like ice. "Do you know how embarrassing this is? I told my friends you were different. But you're exactly what I feared. A man who dreams cheap." The venom in her voice wasn't anger. It was entertainment. She enjoyed breaking me in front of strangers. The waiter froze awkwardly beside us, unsure whether to step in or disappear. My hand stayed steady, but inside, everything cracked. And then from behind Nancy's flawless frame, another face appeared. Identical in every feature, yet completely different. Elizabeth. Her twin stood quietly by the bar, watching everything unfold. But unlike Nancy's cold mockery, Elizabeth's gaze held something deeper. Not pity. Not amusement. Something dangerous. Something I didn't understand yet. Nancy flicked her hair, dismissing me as though I was dirt beneath her heels. "Maybe next time, Billy, bring me something worth saying yes to." She turned to walk away, leaving me kneeling alone beneath hundreds of staring eyes. I slipped the ring back into my pocket, but my eyes never left Elizabeth's. That night, something shifted. I came here to propose to one sister. But the other, one? She was about to change everything. I met Nancy during my second year at the company. She was dazzling. Everyone said it. Her smile could stop conversations mid-sentence. Her confidence filled any room she entered. But what caught me wasn't just her beauty. It was the way she looked at people, like she already owned them. I was foolish enough to believe I could be the exception. Back then, I was nothing more than an ambitious project manager struggling to climb the ladder. She was already established, working under Stephen, our department head, who never hid how fond he was of her. They shared private glances in meetings, inside jokes whispered under their breath. I told myself I was imagining it. That denial would become my greatest weakness. Nancy didn't chase me. She never needed to. I was the one who chased her, trying to win her over with patience, with small thoughtful gestures, with quiet loyalty she never asked for. And for a while, it seemed to work. She let me into her life, allowed me to walk beside her like I mattered. But I never truly did. She made sure I knew that every time she compared me to Stephen. His luxury watch, his expensive car, his designer suits. I couldn't compete, but I kept believing that maybe, if I just stayed long enough, she would see something in me no money could replace. Nancy loved attention. She loved the flowers, the expensive dinners, the vacations she hinted at constantly. I stretched my savings thin, trying to meet her expectations, hoping that every sacrifice was bringing me closer to her heart. But the closer I got, the more she reminded me of how far beneath her I stood. It was during one of those suffocating dinners that I first noticed Elizabeth. She sat at the edge of the room, always quiet, always watching. Unlike Nancy, Elizabeth never tried to be the center of attention, but somehow she drew eyes anyway. Same face, same features, but none of the arrogance. There was a softness about her that made her stand out even more. We barely spoke at first, just polite nods whenever we crossed paths. But I always felt her watching, not in judgment, not in jealousy, but with a curiosity I couldn't understand. And every time Nancy laughed at my efforts, every time she humiliated me in front of her friends, I would catch Elizabeth's eyes in the background, steady and unreadable. Over the months, Nancy's treatment grew colder. The more I tried to please her, the more she enjoyed pulling away. She once looked at me after opening a small necklace I'd saved for, and with a twisted smile said, "You're sweet, Billy." But cheap gifts reflect cheap love. That night, Elizabeth texted me for the first time. I saw everything. You didn't deserve that. It was short, simple, but for the first time in months, I felt seen. From that point on, our interactions shifted. Elizabeth would find reasons to bump into me. Quick conversations in the hallway, subtle glances during company parties. She never crossed any lines, but her presence alone became a strange comfort I never admitted to needing. She listened in ways Nancy never did. She noticed the things Nancy ignored. The exhaustion in my voice, the fading light in my eyes, the way I kept holding on even when I should have let go. But Nancy, she remained the queen of her world. Stephen's attention only made her more confident. Their late-night meetings became more frequent, their chemistry more obvious. And yet, I stayed, foolishly hoping she would someday recognize my loyalty. Didn't realize I was nothing more than her safety net, someone to keep around while she entertained better offers. Then came the proposal night. I had drained every account I had. Sold my old car, pulled strings at work just to buy that ring. It wasn't massive, it wasn't impressive, but it was honest. It represented everything I could give her, my effort, my devotion, my entire being. But to Nancy, none of that mattered. She looked at that ring like it was an insult, and she made sure the entire restaurant knew. Elizabeth watched from the bar, her expression unreadable, but her eyes burning. I had never seen her glare at Nancy that way before. It was like something, inside, her snapped. I walked out that night broken, but free. Nancy had crushed what little hope I had left, but unknowingly, she had also severed the last chain tying me to her. And when my eyes met Elizabeth's on my way out, I saw something I hadn't noticed before, opportunity, and maybe for the first time, a dangerous curiosity. 2 weeks passed after that night. Nancy never called, no apologies, no messages. She discarded me the way she would discard an old dress that no longer suited her style. But I didn't chase her. Not this time, the office whispered. Everyone knew what happened. Nancy had made sure of that. The story spread like wildfire. Poor Billy with his pathetic little ring, humiliated in front of a packed restaurant. Stephen didn't bother hiding his smirk during meetings. He enjoyed watching me fall apart, waiting for me to break completely. But I didn't give him the satisfaction. Then came the unexpected. Elizabeth. She approached me during lunch one afternoon, her voice low, calm. You don't deserve what my sister did to you. I forced a smile. I've heard that before. But you never hear it from her own family, she said softly, looking straight into my eyes. That was the first real conversation we had. After that, Elizabeth began finding more reasons to be near me. Small talks turned into longer ones, coffee breaks, shared rides home. It started innocent, or at least I wanted to believe that. But there was always something beneath her gaze, something unspoken. One rainy evening, she waited by my car after work. Her coat was soaked, her hair clinging to her face. She looked at me like she was struggling with something. I need to ask you something, Billy, she whispered. I unlocked the car, gesturing for her to get inside. Once we sat in silence, she finally spoke. Why did you stay with Nancy for so long? I stared ahead, watching the raindrops race down the windshield. Because I was stupid enough to believe that love was something you could earn if you just tried hard enough. Her voice trembled slightly. She never loved you, you know that, right? I know, I whispered. Elizabeth exhaled, her breath fogging up the window. She used you, and she's still laughing about it. Something in her voice carried more weight than usual. I turned to face her, studying the pain in her eyes. What are you trying to say, Elizabeth? She hesitated, then pulled out her phone. On the screen was a picture. Stephen and Nancy, arms linked, leaving a hotel. The timestamp was the night before my proposal. The silence between us was deafening. My heart pounded as the betrayal washed over me all over again. You knew? I found out after the proposal, she confessed, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to tell you. The world spun around me. I should have felt shattered, but oddly, I felt calm. The truth didn't surprise me. It simply confirmed what my heart had already known. Elizabeth's voice softened. She never deserved your loyalty. I chuckled bitterly. You know what the worst part is? I still bought that ring even after suspecting something was wrong. I still hoped she'd choose me. Elizabeth reached out, her hand gently resting on mine. Her touch was warm, grounding. She made her choice, and maybe you should finally make yours. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The rain outside masked our silence, but the air inside the car grew heavier. Her fingers tightened around mine, hesitant but deliberate. That was the first night I saw Elizabeth not as Nancy's twin, but as something entirely different. Days turned into weeks. Elizabeth and I grew closer with each passing moment. She filled the void Nancy had left, but in a way that felt sincere, not manipulative. She never asked for anything. She never made demands. She simply stood beside me. But the world around us wasn't blind. Stephen noticed. Nancy noticed. Rumors swirled again. This time, Nancy's glare followed us wherever we went. She no longer saw me as disposable. She saw me as dangerous. At the next company event, the tension snapped. Nancy cornered me near the bar, her voice a venomous whisper. I see you've moved on quickly, Billy. I didn't flinch. You made it easy. Her smile was tight, forced. You think Elizabeth is any different? You think she's not playing her own game? I don't care, I replied coldly. At least she didn't humiliate me for sport. Nancy leaned in closer, her breath hot against my ear. You always choose the wrong sister, Billy. You'll regret it. Her words were meant to rattle me, but they didn't. Not anymore. She lost control, and she knew it. The night ended with Elizabeth slipping her arm through mine as we left the hall, her head resting softly on my shoulder. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't known with Nancy. Peace. But deep inside, I also knew something darker was brewing. Nancy wasn't finished. And Stephen? He had his own reasons to keep stirring the fire. The real storm hadn't even started. The days with Elizabeth felt different, like I was walking through unfamiliar territory. Her presence was gentle, steady, but beneath that calm surface, I could sense the tension tightening around us like an invisible rope. Every time I held her hand, every time she smiled at me, there was a whisper in the back of my mind, "You're standing on borrowed ground." I couldn't fully trust my own emotions. Was I with her because I wanted her, or because I wanted to forget Nancy? Or was it something far more dangerous? Revenge. Elizabeth never asked for my confessions. She never pushed for declarations of love. But I saw it in her eyes. The hope, the silent plea for me to choose her, not out of pity, but out of something real. And yet, every time her fingers brushed mine, I could still hear Nancy's voice echoing in my head. You'll regret it. Stephen didn't hide his contempt either. He pulled me into his office one afternoon under the pretense of a project meeting. But his words had nothing to do with work. Playing with both sisters now? His voice carried the arrogance of a man who believed himself untouchable. You must enjoy the attention. I kept my expression calm. You seem concerned, Stephen. He smirked. I'm concerned because you're ruining two women in one move. Nancy's still not over you, and Elizabeth, you really think she's strong enough to handle what's coming? The threat was clear, but I refused to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. I'm not afraid of you. Stephen leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. You should be. Nancy doesn't take rejection well. You know that better than anyone. That night, as I lay beside Elizabeth, listening to her soft breaths while she slept, my mind spiraled. Was I being selfish? Was I dragging her into my war with Nancy and Stephen? She had done nothing to deserve the crossfire. Elizabeth stirred, sensing my restlessness. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. Billy, are you okay? I brushed a strand of hair from her face, forcing a smile. I am now. She looked at me for a moment longer, as if reading the words I refused to speak. Then she nestled closer, her warmth grounding me again, but the unease never left. The next morning, the first cracks appeared. A message arrived. Anonymous. A single photo. Nancy, sitting in Stephen's car late at night. The timestamp, 3 days ago. Elizabeth. Saw it too. Her expression didn't falter, but I saw the flicker of doubt. She didn't ask questions, but silence can be louder than words. Later that evening, as we ate dinner together, she finally spoke. Do you still think about her? Her voice was steady, but her grip on the fork betrayed her. I answered truthfully. I think about what she did, not about her. Elizabeth nodded, but I knew it wasn't enough. The wound was open now, and Nancy was the one holding the knife. Stephen escalated next. He began spreading rumors within the company, whispering behind closed doors that I'd been using both sisters for personal gain, that I'd targeted Elizabeth. After Nancy cut me off, some people believed him, some pretended not to hear, but the poison was spreading. Elizabeth endured the stares at work, the subtle gossip, the judgmental looks from people who once smiled at her. But even in the middle of it, she stayed beside me, never complaining, never lashing out. One night, as we walked home in silence, she finally broke. Billy, am I just your way of getting back at them? Her voice was soft, trembling. The question stabbed deeper than anything Stephen or Nancy could have said. I stopped walking, turning to face her under the dim streetlight. You're not a weapon, Elizabeth. Then what am I? She whispered, reached for her hand. You're the only person who's ever looked at me without wanting to break me. Tears welled in her eyes, but she forced them down. Then why does it feel like we're constantly fighting shadows? Because we were. Nancy's obsession, Stephen's jealousy, my own guilt, all of it hung over us like a storm cloud we couldn't outrun. The final blow came 2 days later. A private email circulated through the office. Screenshots of old conversations, twisted, edited, manipulated, made to look like I had been chasing both sisters at once. A perfect scandal carefully crafted to destroy both my career and Elizabeth's reputation. Stephen stood by, pretending innocence. Nancy, meanwhile, approached Elizabeth in the parking lot that evening. I arrived just in time to hear her words. You think he loves you, Liz? You think you're special? You're nothing but a rebound. Elizabeth's voice didn't shake. At least I never needed to destroy someone to feel important. Nancy's smile faded. He will leave you, just like he should have left me. Elizabeth saw me standing behind her. Without breaking eye contact with her sister, she said firmly, If he does, it won't be because of you. Nancy stormed off, defeated for now, but I saw it in her eyes. This wasn't over. Elizabeth turned to me, her voice softer now. How much longer do we have to fight this, Billy? I pulled her close, my voice steady. Until they run out of moves. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure if that day would ever come. Just when I thought we had survived the worst, the ground beneath us shifted again. The board summoned me unexpectedly. I walked into the room expecting another ambush orchestrated by Stephen, but this time the atmosphere was far heavier. They weren't looking at me with judgment. They were looking at me with disappointment. The chairman cleared his throat. Billy, we've received serious allegations regarding your relationship with both Nancy and Elizabeth. Claims of harassment, favoritism, and unethical behavior. You've left us no choice but to suspend you until a formal investigation is complete. My stomach dropped. I looked around the table, but none of them would meet my gaze. Stephen sat in the corner, calm, quiet, victorious. I opened my mouth to speak, but what was there to say? The evidence they had was manufactured, carefully planted, and I already knew who was behind it. Walking out of that boardroom felt like a public execution, my entire career, destroyed overnight. By the time I reached the parking lot, Elizabeth was already waiting. She didn't need an explanation. She knew. The moment she saw my face, her own drained of color. "They suspended you?" she whispered. I nodded. Stephen finally made his move. Her hands clenched into fists. "I won't let him do this to you." "This isn't just about me anymore," I said softly. "They're going to come after you too." Her lip quivered, but she quickly steadied herself. "Then let them come." Later that evening, we received the final blow, a lawsuit. Nancy had filed a harassment claim. False texts, fake witnesses, a fabricated narrative of manipulation and abuse. She painted herself as a victim trapped between two men, accusing me of emotional exploitation, accusing Elizabeth of betrayal. The media picked it up within hours. Suddenly, we were headline material, corporate scandal, twin sisters caught in love. Triangle with company manager. The damage was immediate. Our neighbors whispered. Reporters lurked outside our apartment. Elizabeth's parents called her in hysterics, demanding she leave me before her future was permanently ruined. I watched her crumble under the weight of it all. She tried to hold strong, but I saw the exhaustion in her eyes every morning. She barely slept, barely ate, and through it all, she never once blamed me. One night, after days of endless phone calls from lawyers and tabloids, she finally broke. "Billy, maybe we should stop." The words hit me like a slap. I stared at her, confused. "You mean stop fighting?" She shook her head slowly, tears already welling in her eyes. "Stop us." "No!" My voice cracked. "I don't want to destroy your life," she whispered. "I'm dragging you into this war. If I step away, maybe it'll stop." I grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet my eyes. "Don't you dare say that!" She sobbed quietly, her body trembling. "They'll never stop, Billy. They'll keep coming until one of us breaks." "I won't let you sacrifice yourself for me." My voice was firm. "We stand together or we fall together." Her breath hitched. What if falling is the only option left? In that moment, I realized something chilling. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. Nancy wanted to destroy Elizabeth. She couldn't handle losing control. First over me, now over her sister. And Stephen was only fueling the fire because my downfall secured his own rise. The next morning I made a decision. I went to Stephen's office. He was waiting, smug, leaning back in his leather chair. "I was wondering when you'd finally crawl in." I didn't respond. I tossed a flash drive onto his desk. His smirk faltered. "What's this?" "Insurance." He plugged it in and froze. Dozens of files filled the screen. Recordings, photos, bank transactions. Evidence of his financial manipulations, his blackmail schemes, his illegal partnerships. Things he thought were buried. His face paled. How did you..." I leaned in. "You weren't the only one gathering leverage, Stephen. The difference is I was patient." He tried to compose himself. "If you leak this, you'll go down with me." "No." I smiled coldly. "Only you." I kept my hands clean. He sat back, silent now. Trapped. I stood up. "You end this lawsuit. You clear Elizabeth's name. You resign quietly. Or this goes public." His breathing grew shallow, but he knew there was no escape. For the first time, Stephen had no move left. As I walked out, my phone buzzed. It was Elizabeth. Her voice was shaking but hopeful. "Billy, what did you do?" I exhaled, staring up at the night sky. "I ended it. I thought it was over when Stephen resigned. But I had underestimated Nancy." 2 days after Stephen disappeared from the company, I received an anonymous package. Inside was a small velvet box, the same one I had used to propose to her. My cheap ring sat inside, untouched, as pristine as the day I bought it. Beneath it was a simple note, written in her handwriting. "You think you've won." The message wasn't a threat. It was a promise that she hadn't surrendered. I didn't show the box to Elizabeth. She had finally begun smiling again. Her career was stabilizing, the media frenzy was fading, and for the first time in months, we were breathing. I didn't want to poison that peace. But deep down, I knew Nancy was waiting, planning her final move, and it came sooner than expected. The night of our engagement party. Elizabeth had said yes weeks earlier, after I finally slipped a real diamond ring onto her finger, a ring that sparkled under the lights, not because of its size, but because of what it represented. She cried when I proposed. Not because of the ring, but because I had chosen her, fully without hesitation. The party was small, close friends, family, a few trusted colleagues. It was perfect. For a while. Then she arrived. Nancy walked in like she owned the air we breathed. She wore a pale silver dress, matching the engagement theme as if she belonged. Gasps echoed as eyes turned toward her. Whispers began to ripple, like waves in the crowd. Elizabeth's hand tightened around mine instantly. Her body stiffened, but her face remained calm. She wasn't surprised. Neither was I. Nancy approached slowly, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Every step deliberate, every movement rehearsed. "Billy," she greeted, voice soft, almost sweet. I stared at her, my jaw tight. "You shouldn't be here." Her gaze flickered to Elizabeth, then back to me. "I had to come. This is a family event, isn't it?" Elizabeth spoke first, her tone sharp but steady. "You lost the right to call this family when you tried to ruin both of us." Nancy smiled faintly. "Oh, Liz, you still think this is about you?" I stepped between them, shielding Elizabeth. "Leave." Nancy's eyes glistened, though no tears fell. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. The screen lit up with a video. Without pressing play, she held it up for me to see. "One last gift, Billy," she whispered. "One last truth." I hesitated. "What is this?" Her smile widened. "The real reason Stephen targeted you." My stomach sank. I glanced at Elizabeth, then back to Nancy. She pressed play. The video showed a hotel surveillance recording from almost a year ago. Stephen in the lobby, pacing. Then Nancy appeared, laughing, arms wrapped around him. But it wasn't a meeting. It was an argument. The audio was clear. "You said you'd handle it," Nancy hissed. Stephen whispered harshly. "I did. I destroyed his reputation like you wanted." "You call that handling it?" Nancy snapped. "I wanted him. Broken, Stephen. Ruined. He humiliated me." "You're the one who rejected him. You laughed at him in public," Stephen shot back. Nancy's voice cracked. "Because he humiliated me first. He dared propose with that toy ring. He made me look cheap in front of everyone." Stephen grabbed her wrist. "You're obsessed, Nancy. Move on." "I will," she whispered, "when he's begging me to take him back. When he knows what it feels like to be worthless." The video ended. The room was dead silent. The guests were frozen, watching us, uncertain whether to pretend they hadn't seen or heard anything. Elizabeth stared at her sister, her voice breaking for the first time that evening. All this time, it wasn't even about Stephen. It was never about love. It was always about control. Nancy's mask finally slipped. Of course it was. I felt something inside me twist violently. All these years, I thought Nancy's cruelty was cold indifference, that she simply didn't care. But this was far more dangerous. She cared too much. She had orchestrated everything. Stephen's involvement, the harassment claims, the fake evidence, all to watch me crumble. "I never loved him," Nancy whispered, her voice trembling now. "But I couldn't let him love someone else. Not after I threw him away." "You never threw me away," I said quietly, my chest heaving. "You threw away yourself." Nancy's composure cracked. Her breath quickened, her hands shaking. "I gave you everything I thought you wanted." "You never gave anything," I said coldly. "You took, you drained, you used, And you lost. Her lip quivered. She reached out suddenly as if to touch me, to stop me, to rewind everything. Please, Billy. Elizabeth stepped forward, placing herself directly between us. Her voice was fierce. You will not touch him. Nancy's hand froze midair, her eyes filled with panic. Liz, you tried to destroy him, Elizabeth continued. You tried to destroy me. You've been at war with yourself for years, and you pulled us into it, but it ends here. Nancy's shoulders collapsed, her voice almost childlike. I never wanted to lose both of you. You never had either of us, I said. She looked lost, truly lost for the first time. No threats, no power, just emptiness. Security arrived quietly, as requested earlier. Nancy didn't resist when they escorted her out. She turned her head one last time, eyes swollen, lips trembling. I only wanted to matter. You could have, Elizabeth whispered, tears in her own eyes. If you'd let yourself. As the doors closed behind Nancy, the room exhaled as one, but I couldn't move. My legs felt heavy, as though every ounce of pain that had built over the years was weighing me down. Elizabeth gripped my hand, grounding me. It's over, Billy. I looked at her, studying her face, so similar to Nancy's, yet carrying none of her poison. The same blood, the same beauty. But a different soul, and in that moment, I finally understood something I hadn't before. I had never truly loved Nancy. I had loved the idea of saving her, of being enough for her. But with Elizabeth, there was no saving required, only loving, only building. The war was over, and for the first time I was finally free. The weeks following the engagement party felt strangely quiet. Not peaceful, just silent, like the eye of a storm that had finally passed but left debris scattered everywhere. The media eventually moved on. Without Stephen pulling strings and Nancy's false accusations dismantled, the headlines faded into irrelevance. The company reinstated my position after clearing my name, though I no longer cared for the career I once sacrificed everything for. Elizabeth stood beside me through it all. She never wavered. The battles had left their scars, but she carried them with quiet grace. There were nights I'd wake up and find her sitting by the window, staring out into the city lights, lost in thought. She never said it, but I knew she was still haunted by her sister's downfall, and yet, she never regretted choosing me. We married 3 months later, not for spectacle. No grand ballrooms or hundreds of guests, just the two of us, our closest, friends, and her parents, who had finally come to accept our relationship after seeing how far we were willing to fight for each other. Standing there, sliding the ring onto her finger, I felt something I never experienced during my first proposal. No fear, no hesitation, no lingering doubts about whether I was enough, because for Elizabeth, I was. After the ceremony, as we stood on the balcony overlooking the city, she leaned against me, her voice soft. Do you think she'll ever come back? Nancy, the name no one dared to mention aloud for months. I didn't answer right away. The truth was, I didn't know. After that night at the engagement party, she had vanished. She withdrew from public life completely. Her social media disappeared. Her job resigned. Even her parents claimed they didn't know where she had gone. But I had my suspicions, and I was right. 2 months into our marriage, an envelope arrived at my office. No return address, no message, just a single photograph. Nancy, sitting alone at a seaside cafe in another country, wearing simple clothes, no designer brands, no makeup, no entourage, her eyes hollow, distant. The same woman who once held the world in her palm, now reduced to a shadow quietly existing on the edges of life. Attached was a second item, the same cheap ring I once offered her, mailed back with silent finality. Elizabeth never saw the envelope. I burned it that night, watching the flames consume what little remained of Nancy's presence in our lives. That was her ultimate punishment. Not public humiliation, not revenge, oblivion. Nancy's greatest fear was never losing love. It was becoming Irrelevant, and that's exactly where she ended. But fate wasn't done delivering its final twists. One rainy evening, as Elizabeth and I were leaving a charity event, a familiar voice stopped us just outside the hall. Billy. I froze. So did Elizabeth. Turning, slowly I saw him. Stephen. He looked far worse than I remembered. The man who once carried himself like royalty now resembled a discarded puppet. His eyes were bloodshot, his suit wrinkled, his hair disheveled. He had lost everything, his position, his money, his influence. The investigations I launched after exposing him didn't just end his career, they buried him financially and legally. Multiple lawsuits drained every ounce of his wealth. His allies abandoned him one by one. He was finished. Stephen approached carefully, as if hoping for mercy. I just wanted to talk, he said quietly. Elizabeth stepped closer to me, her voice cold. There's nothing to talk about. He ignored her, keeping his eyes on me. I know I was wrong. I went too far, but I lost everything because of you. No, I corrected. You lost everything because you thought you were untouchable. His voice cracked. I have nothing left. I'm begging you. That word. Begging. The very thing he once mocked me for. I stared at him for a long moment, seeing the broken shell of the man who once tried to dismantle my life. There's nothing I can give you, Stephen, I said finally. You made your choices. His shoulders collapsed as he stumbled back into the rain, disappearing into the night. Elizabeth squeezed my hand. You didn't have to come here, Billy. I know, I whispered. But some people need to see how far they've fallen. That was Stephen's closure. A man who once ruled others with power and fear reduced to begging for mercy from the one man he tried to destroy, and with that, the final piece of our war ended. Months turned into years. Elizabeth and I built a life not stained by past mistakes, but strengthened by surviving them. We traveled, built our careers quietly, and kept our circle small. Every anniversary, I would glance at her ring, far more expensive than the first one, but it was never about the size. It was about the fact that it sat on the right hand, on the right woman. One evening, as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset, Elizabeth leaned against my shoulder. Do you ever think about how different it could have been? I smiled. I used to. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with the same warmth that first drew me in. Do you regret any of it? I shook my head. Not a second. Every betrayal led me here. Every scar taught me who truly mattered. She smiled, closing her eyes. Then let's never look back again. And we didn't. Nancy faded into silence. Stephen disappeared from the world. But Elizabeth and I, we built something unshakable out of everything they tried to destroy, and that was the ultimate revenge neither of them could ever touch.